that it was Sardar Patel, along with Jawaharlal, who negotiated the term with the leadership of the National Conference. And out of those negotiations that Article 370 was drafted, Sardar Patel and Gopal Swami Iyengar, they actually drafted this 370, which was subsequently discussed and adopted in the Constituent Assembly. And it was Sardar Patel who moved this constitutional provision in the Constituent Assembly. Now, what we have to realize is that we had 29 states of the Indian Union before the 5th of August. And destroyed one of the states of the Indian Union. And what we have witnessed is an assault on democracy, on secularism and federalism. And Kashmir today symbolizes this triple assault on democracy, on secularism and federalism. The BJP and its controllers, the RSS, have never accepted the state of Jammu and Kashmir as an entity, as a state, primarily because it is a Muslim majority state. It is the only Muslim majority state in India among the 29 states that exist. And if they were only concerned about Article 370, saying that is a source for all the troubles and problems of Jammu and Kashmir, they could have just abrogated Article 370 and retained Jammu and Kashmir as a state of the Indian Union. But the real aim was not, the real target was not Article 370, the real target was Jammu. And the people of Kashmir today are being punished for having been part of the only Muslim majority state of the Indian Union. The fact that this government facilitated a visit by 27 members of the European Parliament yesterday to Srinagar, what Prashant Bhushan has just mentioned, is significant. Because out of this 27, 22 belong to what are recognized as the far right in Europe. Far right ranging from neo-fascist to racist to xenophobic and Islamophobic parties. And they have been brought here because to celebrate the fact that a Muslim majority state has been destroyed. They have been selected. This is not an official delegation of the European Parliament. They've all said they have come here in our personal capacities. And nobody can believe a lady called Madhi Sharma has chosen them. Because if you look at the range of the parties, the Alternative for Deutschland in Germany, the National Front, Le Pen's National Front in France, the Forza Italia in Italy, the Brexit Party of England, and so on and so forth. All these parties, they have a common characteristic, which is Islamophobia, which is anti-Muslim, whether it's expressed through anti-immigrant policy or racism, etc., etc. And they are the only ones who would endorse Modi's assault on the state of Jammu and Kashmir and justify it. So the real issue is before us is one, what has happened in Jammu and Kashmir It's a culmination of a long history of denial of democracy, denial of autonomy, and a betrayal of the commitment made by the Indian state to the people of Jammu and Kashmir, who could very well have chosen at the time of independence to accede to Pakistan. You all know the circumstances in which the people of Kashmir, led by the National Conference, came out and fought against the invaders from Pakistan and compelled the Maharaja to accede by signing the instrument of accession. Since then, after Article 370 was adopted, successive governments in India have eroded whatever autonomy was there provided in Article 370. Successive governments in India have not treated the Kashmiris as equal citizens of India. I recall the time in 2010, and there was a previous government, when 110 young people were shot at by the security forces. At that time, I went to the Prime Minister of India and said, if even a fraction of young people had been shot like this in the streets of India anywhere else, no government could have survived. How is this happening in India? But this has been the attitude. You have seen now, after nearly 3 months of this lockdown, you have seen 14-year-olds, 16-year-olds arrested under the Public Safety Act. One of them is in a jail in Uttar Pradesh. They finally had to accept that he is 16 years, he is a minor. You have had a 14-year-old boy dying of pellet injuries. And you have had the security forces in Kashmir using pellet guns for the last more than 1 decade. And we have been telling this government at the center that this is a lethal weapon. You cannot use this against civilian protesters. But still they do it. This betrayal of the people of Kashmir, the inability of the Indian state to treat an ordinary person in Kashmir as an Indian citizen, that has now reached its logical culmination with the BJP and the RSS now in control of this Indian state. And what you have seen happening is what the RSS had advocated right from the beginning. After Jammu and Kashmir came into being as part of the Indian Union, they were opposed to Article 370 and they have advocated the trifurcation of the state. Badri Raina is not come. He'll tell you more of the history of this. That they wanted Jammu separated, they wanted Ladakh separated, and the valley as a separate entity. This is the way they felt they could destroy Jammu and Kashmir. And this stems from their communal vision, the inability to accept India except as based on the two-nation theory. They are now wanting to give Savarkar a Bharat Ratna, the father of the two-nation theory, that they did not want Jammu and Kashmir as a Muslim majority state. And now the next step, the implications for us in India. One, the attack on democracy. How can you justify or explain or give any rationale for locking up more than 70 lakh people and deprive them of elementary liberties and rights? How can you explain locking up people under a draconian Public Safety Act which can keep you in jail for 2 years without a trial or without bail? But it's happening on a large scale. It's become more noticeable today because mainstream political leaders, all the political leaders are in jail. But this has been happening in Kashmir over the years with hundreds and hundreds of people. So the way democracy has been destroyed in Jammu and Kashmir, it is a warning of what is going to happen to the rest of India in the future. Because you have a government run by a party and an organization which has a fascistic view. And the second aspect, the attack on secularism, the only reason many of us stood firmly saying that Kashmir is a part of India is because we felt that India as a secular state, India being secular, the test of that is how far we can have Kashmir within the Indian Union being treated equally and fairly like all other states of India, like all other peoples of other states of India. And for us, it was a touchstone of our secularism. And to see that this secularism is preserved and protected, that has been completely attacked and damaged today. Because the signal is gone that we actually are going to become a Hindu Rashtra. And we cannot tolerate a state like Jammu and Kashmir within that Rashtra. And the third is federalism. That India is a country which has diverse peoples, languages, society, cultures, religions, and there will be a diversity of states. And all these states of the Indian Union are strong, should be strong and equal. We cannot have an authoritarian centralized state in India. But that federal principle has been gravely damaged by this arbitrary act of the Modi government. Today you'll have seen in the newspapers, after many years of peace talks, an agreement was to be finalized with the Naga people, with their organizations, who had fought for more than 4 decades an armed struggle against the Indian state. And when the peace talks began, some of us were involved on the sidelines of this because we were of the firm opinion that our constitution can provide for the safeguards that they are asking for the identity of the Naga people, for the protection of their culture, for their way of life. And the example was Article 37. And therefore, an agreement could be made with the Naga insurgents and the Naga organizations for a peace treaty which would make Nagaland voluntarily part of the Indian Union. As you might have seen, the talks have broken down now because one of the vital points of that agreement, which the draft which they never released, was a separate flag and a constitution. This had been agreed to by the Modi government 3 years ago, but they did not release the draft. Now, after what they have done in Kashmir, they cannot give the Nagas a flag and a constitution, which they have deprived the Kashmiris of. That is why the talks are broken down. Otherwise, tomorrow, that agreement would have been announced. And there's going to be great turmoil in the Northeast if this peace agreement fails to materialize. So what we are saying is you are talking about integrating Kashmir into India. You are actually going to disintegrate India. You're going to destroy the Indian Union. You're going to destroy Indian federalism. You're going to destroy Indian democracy. So the issue for us does not end tomorrow with the constitutional fraud which has been perpetrated by this action of the Modi government. We have to continue our struggle and our campaign. We have to make the people of Kashmir know that this Modi government's brutal acts are not the voice of the people of India. Yes, they have support. They have garnered support from the people by presenting Kashmir as a hotbed of terrorism and separatism, and Article 370 is being abolished to end that and to integrate Kashmir with the Indian Union. But what we are going to continue to struggle for is the protection of Indian democracy, the protection of Indian secularism, and the protection of Indian federalism. If that has to be done, this struggle to defend Jammu and Kashmir, to see that the maximum autonomy is provided for Jammu and Kashmir. That is the aim of Article 370. Call it whatever you like. What Narasimha Rao later promised, maximum autonomy, the sky is the limit. This is the promise made. We have never sought only autonomy for Jammu and Kashmir. We on the left have said all the states must get greater autonomy, must have more rights in a federal setup. So what we are fighting for is fighting for our future also. Fighting against this authoritarian Hindutva onslaught. So we have to continue our struggle and our campaign and build support and unity so that we show the people of Kashmir that we, the rest of India, stand in solidarity with them. And the first step in that is to see that they end this repressive regime and this clampdown, release all political prisoners or activists, and end all the restrictions on civil liberties, movement, etc. This struggle has to go on, and it will be a long struggle, but it is part of our overall struggle for preserving and protecting the democratic, secular, federal character of our republic and our country. Thank you.